Rochelle Grant Campbell clutched her passport and boarding pass with trembling fingers. Not from nerves, but pure exhilaration. At 27, she was embarking on the trip she dreamed of since she was a teenager. A Caribbean honeymoon with the love of her life. Standing beside her, tall and broad-shouldered in a crisp linen shirt, was Duane Campbell, her husband of exactly 3 days. They had been inseparable since they met at a charity gala in Kingston 2 years earlier. Rochelle, a boutique owner known for her fashion flair and sharp wit, had been instantly drawn to Duane's deep voice and charismatic charm. He was an up-and-coming contractor with big plans and a magnetic presence. To their friends, they were the golden couple, stylish, successful, deeply in love. Their whirlwind romance had culminated in a picture-perfect wedding on the North Coast. Guests posted glowing stories online. Rochelle descending the aisle in a pearl-beaded gown, Duane wiping away a tear as she approached. The reception was a celebration of love, culture, and hope. Steel drums, jerk chicken, and endless dancing marked the beginning of their shared life. Now, as they prepared to board a short flight to Nassau, the Bahamas, Rochelle leaned into Duane and whispered, "This is it, babe, the start of everything." Duane smiled, his hand tightening around hers. Forever begins now. The flight was smooth, and they toasted with champagne provided by the flight attendants, who beamed at the glowing couple. Rochelle couldn't help but snap selfies. The crystal-clear view from 30,000 feet, the matching Mr. and Mrs. passport holders, and the little gold rings that now adorned their fingers. Every detail was perfect. When they landed in Nassau, the Caribbean breeze hit them like a kiss, warm, salty, and full of promise. A black SUV from their 5-star resort greeted them with chilled towels and complimentary rum punch. Rochelle squealed with delight at the sight of their overwater villa. "This place is unreal," she gushed as she danced barefoot on the polished wooden deck, the sea glittering below. That first evening, they dined under the stars at the resort's private beach. Torches flickered in the wind, and soft reggae music played in the background. Rochelle wore a flowy red dress, her skin glowing in the candlelight. Duane fed her bites of grilled lobster and whispered plans about buying a house, starting a family, building a future together. Yet even in that moment of bliss, there were brief shadows. When the waiter smiled too long at Rochelle, Duane's jaw clenched. When she laughed a bit too loud at a fellow tourist's joke, his hand found her waist in a firm, possessive grip. Rochelle brushed it off. Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe he was just tired from the wedding chaos. This was their honeymoon. Nothing was going to spoil it. Back in their villa that night, waves lapping gently beneath them, Rochelle posted a photo to her Instagram story. The ocean by moonlight and the caption, "Wifey status activated. Crescent moon ring #forever Campbells." She had no way of knowing it would be her last post, and that their dream honeymoon was about to descend into an unimaginable nightmare. The next morning, Rochelle awoke to the soft rhythm of waves gently brushing against the wooden stilts beneath their overwater villa. Sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains, casting golden patterns across the bed where Duane still lay asleep. For a moment, it felt like they were the only two people on Earth. She slipped out of bed, pulled on a silk robe and stepped onto the deck. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, azure and calm. Rochelle closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. This was paradise. They spent the day wrapped in newlywed bliss. Breakfast arrived in a floating tray, served in their private plunge pool. Duane fed her fresh mango slices and kissed her between sips of pineapple juice. Later, they wandered hand in hand through the resort's lush garden paths, snapping selfies and tagging locations. #Bahamas vibes, #Love Island, #Campbell's on tour. Everything was curated for perfection. Their smiles, their meals, their online image. But behind the filters, there were flickers of something else. At lunch, a small disagreement over sunscreen turned oddly sharp. Rochelle wanted to reapply. Duane rolled his eyes and muttered, "You don't need to put that on every 5 minutes." His voice was low, but the edge was unmistakable. She laughed it off, but the mood shifted. When she excused herself to take a phone call from her younger sister in Jamaica, Duane stared at her back with a blank expression. By evening, things returned to normal, or at least what passed for normal in a tropical escape fueled by cocktails and curated intimacy. They joined a catamaran cruise with other couples from the resort. Champagne flowed, a reggae band played Bob Marley classics, and everyone danced under the pink-streaked sky. Rochelle, radiant in a white bikini and sheer cover-up, threw her arms around Duane and posed for photos with the crew. One of the staff, a tall, easygoing Bahamian man named Cal, offered to take a couple's portrait with the sunset behind them. "Y'all look like a movie," Cal said with a grin. Duane chuckled tightly. "Yeah? Don't go running off with my wife now, boss." Rochelle smiled awkwardly, brushing it off again. But she noticed Duane didn't join in the group dancing after that. He stood by the railing, sipping his drink in silence, eyes fixed on her from a distance. That night, back in the villa, Rochelle uploaded the picture Cal had taken. It was perfect, the sea glowing behind them, her head resting on Duane's chest, their silhouettes kissed by dusk. Her caption read, "Heaven has a name, blue heart sparkles, #honeymoon magic." But the honeymoon wasn't as magical as it looked. And Rochelle, always quick with a camera, didn't post any stories after midnight. Her last viewed WhatsApp status showed a message sent to her best friend. "He's being weird. Jealous over every guy. I'm keeping my eyes open." The next day, Rochelle appeared more reserved. She spent more time reading alone by the beach while Duane wandered in and out of the resort bar. Staff remembered him asking about off-the-map places to go, private islands, hidden coves, secluded boat rides. "I want somewhere special," he told the concierge. "Something unforgettable for my wife." Unforgettable indeed. That evening, they booked a private boat tour with Cal, the same crew member from the cruise. It was advertised as a sunset lover's escape, with wine, snorkeling, and a trip to a nearby uninhabited islet known for its mangroves and hidden coves. They departed around 6:45 p.m. The sky was awash in amber. Rochelle waved at another couple on the pier before boarding. It was the last time she would ever be seen alive. The next morning, the resort buzzed with its usual symphony of luxury. The clinking of breakfast cutlery, ocean breeze rustling palm fronds, soft laughter from poolside loungers. But something was off. By 10 a.m., the Campbell's breakfast tray, custom ordered the night before, still sat untouched outside their villa. The Do Not Disturb sign hung loosely on the doorknob. Housekeeping knocked twice, got no answer, and made a note to return later. By noon, a concierge was alerted. Guests who had spoken with the couple during the week mentioned the private boat trip they'd taken the previous evening. No one had seen them return. Calls to the villa went unanswered. The security team reviewed the logs. There was no entry registered after 9:30 p.m. Just after 1 p.m., a local fisherman radioed in something even more alarming. A man had been found barely conscious on a small rocky inlet 2 miles north of the main island, disoriented, bruised, and bleeding from a gash on his head. He was later identified as Duane Campbell. He was immediately rushed to Princess Margaret Hospital in Nassau. Rochelle was not with him, nor was the boat. The news spread quickly among the staff, then to the guests. Whispers and speculation rippled through the hallways and poolside cabanas. The perfect couple from Jamaica had vanished, and only one had returned. By evening, the Bahamian police had launched a missing persons investigation. Cal, the boat guide, was nowhere to be found. His personal phone went unanswered, and his rental boat had not been returned. Back at the resort, detectives canvassed for information. Several staff members recalled hearing loud arguments coming from the Campbell's villa on multiple nights. "She was crying once," said Aisha, a room attendant. "I didn't want to intrude, but I paused near the door and I heard her say, 'Why are you like this? I just want to enjoy this trip.' Then something shattered. Maybe a glass." Another staffer, one of the bartenders, remembered a separate incident from earlier in the week. "She was friendly, talking to a few other guests at the bar. Nothing flirty," he said. "But when her husband came in, he gave me a look like I was stepping over a line. He didn't like her talking to anyone, man or woman." Guests had noticed it too. A couple from Toronto, who had shared a group dinner excursion with the Campbells on their second night, described the dynamic as off. She seemed bubbly, full of life. He was quiet, almost too quiet, said the woman. When she joked with another guest, he just stared at her. No smile, no laughter. Like he was watching her every move. Police seized security footage and reviewed timestamps. There was no video of the boat leaving. Cal had apparently taken it from a less monitored dock, likely to avoid detection. But the concierge confirmed the booking. Cal had signed the log. The boat had a GPS tracker, but the last signal had dropped off around 7:50 p.m., not far from a remote islet called Dead Man's Cove. That name would soon prove darkly prophetic. In the hospital, investigators questioned Duane once he regained full consciousness. His face was pale, his voice flat. "We were attacked," he mumbled. "Two men, maybe pirates. They came onto the boat." Rochelle screamed, and then everything went black. When asked how he'd gotten to the inlet where he was found, he shook his head. "I don't remember." Detectives weren't buying it. He had no defensive wounds, no sign of a struggle consistent with an ambush. The gash on his head was shallow, more like a scrape from coral than a blow from a weapon. His hands were clean. His clothes, though torn and soaked, had no traces of blood, no signs of another person's DNA. And still, there was no sign of Rochelle. The media caught wind of the story by the next day. "Jamaican honeymoon turns to nightmare in Bahamas," read one headline. "Wife missing. Husband injured. Guide vanished." Social media, once filled with Rochelle's cheerful honeymoon posts, was now filled with #Justice for Rochelle tags. But justice would be slow and painful, because the truth, buried in blood, lies, and saltwater, had yet to fully surface. The evening of July 22nd began like a scene from a romance novel. Rochelle had changed into a flowing white maxi dress embroidered with soft blue waves. Her hair was pulled into a loose braid, and her skin glowed with a tropical sheen. She looked effortlessly stunning. Duane, dressed in a light cotton shirt and khaki slacks, trailed behind her as they walked down the palm-lined path toward the private marina where Cal waited beside a sleek 22-foot boat. "This is gonna be special," Cal had told them earlier. "Crystal waters, secret spot, wine and food all packed. Just you two, the ocean, and the stars." Rochelle smiled brightly, grateful for a quiet moment away from the resort crowd, and maybe, subconsciously, away from Duane's subtle tension. She had noticed his mood darken more than once over the past 2 days, but she tried to stay positive. It was their honeymoon. This trip was supposed to mend, not break. The boat left the marina just before sunset, the sun hanging low and orange like a burning coin in the sky. Cal steered with confidence, maneuvering the boat toward the outer cays that dotted the waters like emeralds dropped into sapphire. He had promised a special stop at Dead Man's Cove, a secluded inlet few tourists knew about. On board, they clinked plastic glasses filled with rose wine. Rochelle leaned against the rail, snapping a video of the pink-lit water, her voice in the background, saying, "Wish you were here, sis. This place is unreal." It would be the last message she ever recorded. Cal anchored near a quiet strip of mangroves. He offered them a charcuterie box, a Bluetooth speaker played soft island jazz, and then he gave the couple privacy, moving to the front of the boat. Rochelle and Duane sat together under a sky turning from lavender to navy. What happened next is a puzzle built from partial truths, silent witnesses, and blood. Duane's version of the events, told hours later from a hospital bed, went like this. "We were relaxing, talking. Cal was somewhere at the front. Then 2 men in a smaller boat came out of nowhere. They climbed on board. One had a knife, the other a gun. Rochelle screamed. I tried to fight back. Got hit in the head. I blacked out." It was a compelling story, dramatic, terrifying. But it had holes from the start. Police began piecing together evidence that painted a much different picture. At 3:47 a.m. the following morning, a resident near the shoreline in eastern Nassau called emergency services to report screaming coming from the water. When police responded, they found nothing but silence and moonlight. But this report later became vital, because the timing placed the possible incident far later than Duane's claimed sunset attack. And then came the first break in the case. At 8:26 a.m., a local fisherman found a piece of torn, blood-stained clothing floating in the mangroves near Dead Man's Cove. It was a section of Rochelle's dress, confirmed by her sister from photos. Divers were dispatched. After 2 hours of searching the shallow mangrove roots, they made a grim discovery. Rochelle's body was found submerged in 3 feet of water, tangled in seagrass. She had deep lacerations on her arms and defensive wounds on her hands. Her neck showed bruises, consistent with strangulation, and her left wrist was fractured. The condition of her body suggested a brutal struggle, and no one else had been there except Duane and Cal. But Cal was missing. Investigators tracked Cal's phone to a signal tower just a mile from a local fishing dock, where his abandoned scooter was found. His phone had been turned off hours before. No signs of violence, no blood, just silence. Back at the hospital, detectives re-interviewed Duane. This time, they asked him why his injuries didn't match the level of violence Rochelle had suffered. "Why no bruises on your arms if you were in a knife fight?" one officer asked. Duane paused. "I don't know. I was knocked out fast. I couldn't see what they did to her." "And why didn't you call for help after waking up?" another officer added. "You were conscious by sunrise, according to the fisherman who found you. But you didn't scream, didn't wave anyone down." Duane said nothing. The detectives left the room that day with a growing suspicion. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It wasn't a pirate attack. This was something far more intimate. A domestic homicide, disguised as a tragedy at sea. But where was Cal? And if Duane had killed Rochelle, did Cal witness it? Or was Cal dead too? More answers would come, and they would only get darker. By the next morning, Rochelle's murder had officially become international news. Headlines across Jamaican and Bahamian outlets echoed with disbelief and outrage. Jamaican bride found dead in Bahamas. Husband survives alleged pirate attack. Mystery deepens. Tour guide missing. New bride dead. Husband in hospital. But behind the headlines, investigators in Nassau were moving swiftly. The forensics team returned to the mangrove inlet where Rochelle's body had been recovered. This time, they brought cadaver dogs and underwater equipment. What they discovered only deepened the suspicion around Duane. Floating near a half-submerged log, police found a silver wristwatch, engraved on the back with "Forever, RC", a wedding gift from Rochelle to Duane, based on Instagram posts. It had blood on the band. Nearby, wedged between rocks under the waterline, divers uncovered the missing boat. It was badly scuffed, one side partially dented. Inside, dried blood stained the wooden seat bench and side paneling. A wine glass was shattered near the bow. The charcuterie box was still inside, untouched. No signs of a robbery. No missing engine. No weapons found. And most tellingly, no signs of another boat. No secondary set of tracks or drag marks leading in or out of the mangroves. This wasn't a random ambush. It was a crime of passion. And Cal? Still missing. That afternoon, a tip came in. A beachcomber had found a waterproof pouch washed ashore on a nearby quay. Inside were 2 wallets, Cal's and Rochelle's, along with her iPhone, water-damaged but intact. Forensic techs took the device and managed to power it up long enough to access her recent messages, photos, and videos. There, time-stamped at 7:41 p.m. the night of the boat trip, was a video. Just 12 seconds long, it showed Rochelle smiling at the camera, holding her wine glass as the ocean shimmered behind her. She turned the phone around, panning to show Duane seated opposite her. He was not smiling. He looked tense, lips pursed, gaze locked on her. In the background, Cal could be seen standing casually at the front of the boat, steering. But what came after the video sent chills down every spine in the investigation room. A voice note, unsent, but saved in her phone drafts. If anything happens to me, tell my sister I love her. Duane's been acting strange. I think he's planning something. He doesn't want me talking to Cal. Please, just. The voice cut off, either interrupted, or worse. That voice note would later serve as a critical piece of evidence. But for now, it raised two urgent questions. Was Cal a target, or a witness? And where was he now? By day's end, investigators tracked Cal's last known signal to a tiny, uninhabited island called Shark's Point, about 5 miles southeast of Nassau. A search team was dispatched. Hours passed before a helicopter spotted a faint SOS drawn into the sand with driftwood. Cal was alive, but barely. He was found dehydrated, sunburned, and visibly shaken. He had fled to the island by swimming part of the way after, according to him. Duane lost it. At the hospital, surrounded by police, Cal finally gave his side of the story. They were arguing, loud. I was at the front of the boat, trying to stay out of it. But then I heard a scream. I turned around and saw him grab her, choking her. She was trying to fight him off, but he was too strong. She collapsed, panicked. I tried to step in, but he came at me. I jumped overboard. I swam to the mangroves and hid. I saw him dump her body in the water and shove the boat away. Then he jumped too. Cal said he hid for hours, terrified Duane would come after him. When daylight came, he swam to the nearest land he could reach, Shark's Point, where he remained until he was found. His statement confirmed everything the police had begun to suspect. Duane Campbell was arrested the following morning, handcuffed in his hospital bed. His charge, first-degree murder. When he was informed of Cal's survival and testimony, Duane's only response was, "He's lying." But the blood, the bruises, the voice note, and now an eyewitness, told a story far too damning to ignore. What was meant to be a honeymoon in paradise had become a horror that would haunt two nations. And the trial ahead would unearth even deeper secrets, ones buried not just in blood, but in the very foundations of a marriage that had looked perfect from the outside and was rotting from within. The courtroom in downtown Nassau was packed by the time the trial of Duane Campbell began in early December. Seats were filled with journalists, lawyers, local onlookers, and supporters from both Jamaica and the Bahamas. Rochelle's parents sat on the front bench, stone-faced and grieving. Her sister clutched a folded photo of Rochelle in her wedding dress. The man at the center of it all sat silently, eyes lowered. His orange prison jumpsuit a far cry from the tailored suits he wore in wedding photos that had once gone viral. The prosecution dubbed it a murder born of control, jealousy, and rage. They painted a chilling timeline, a groom with a controlling personality, a rising pattern of possessiveness and paranoia, a romantic vacation that masked a toxic dynamic. A sudden, violent end when Rochelle dared to show independence, talking freely with the tour guide, laughing without Duane's approval. Their star witness? Cal Johnson, the young Bahamian boat operator who had narrowly escaped becoming a second victim. He took the stand on day 3, hands still trembling months after the night in question. She didn't even raise her voice, Cal testified. She told him to calm down, that she wasn't flirting with me. But he just snapped, grabbed her by the throat. I've never seen someone's face change like that. When asked why he didn't try to stop it, Cal choked up. I did. I yelled. But when he turned on me, I thought I was next. I jumped in the water and hid in the mangroves all night. Cal's testimony shook the courtroom. But it was Rochelle's voice that truly silenced the jury. The court played her unsent voice note, her last recorded words. If anything happens to me, tell my sister I love her. Duane's been acting strange. I think he's planning something. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even jurors were seen blinking back tears. The defense tried desperately to counter. Duane's lawyer argued the death was accidental, that an argument had escalated and Rochelle fell, hit her head, and drowned. He said Cal was lying to save himself, and that no one could prove intent to kill. But the evidence was overwhelming. Strangulation bruises, fractured wrist, signs of a prolonged struggle, a staged pirate attack story with no physical support. A forensic pathologist confirmed Rochelle had not drowned. She was strangled before her body was dumped in the water. Duane never took the stand. After 4 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict. Guilty. As the verdict was read aloud, Rochelle's mother broke down in sobs. Duane showed no emotion, not a single tear, just the same hollow expression he'd worn throughout the trial. At sentencing, the judge spared no words. You turned paradise into a grave. You betrayed your vows and took the life of a woman who trusted you, who loved you. You staged lies, pointed fingers, and showed no remorse. This court sentences you to life in prison without parole. Outside, crowds gathered. Candles were lit. Rochelle's face appeared on posters, t-shirts, murals. Her sister, speaking to reporters, said, "She was more than a victim. She was a light, a laugh, a dreamer. She had just started her life. And he stole all of that because he couldn't control her joy. But we will carry her joy for her. Every day." The case made headlines across the Caribbean. It ignited conversations about domestic violence, emotional abuse in marriages, and how social media often hides real pain. Rochelle's Instagram remained frozen in time, a digital monument to a woman who never got her forever. But behind her final smiling selfie was a story the world would never forget.